Okay, so let's talk about EQ now. I added a longer sound file so we can have a better sound file to work with. It's a little bit longer, not just too short, but it's still my daughter talking.
It was a square with arms and there was little things sticking up. And when you put them down.
Those are some old samples I recorded several years ago when my daughter was 3 years old, and I wound up making a piece out of this, and I always use them as my example just because I know how they're supposed to sound. So when I add effects, I know exactly how it's changing, and they're also kind of cool and bring back memories. Anyway, so EQ, we'll go to effects. Once again, I got rid of the other effect, so I'm just going to go to RIA EQ. And so what is an EQ? An EQ is an equalizer. You can, I guess in more technical terms, it's a series of filters that modify, that basically can allow you to either increase the volume or decrease the volume of certain frequencies. Typically, you're dealing with a certain region of a frequencies, but when it comes to EQs, you're using a whole bunch of these in a row, so you can actually really control and fine tune the color of the sound. And it's used for all kinds of things. Sometimes it's helpful just get rid of noise. For example, if you have a hiss in a certain frequency,
Arms
what's
and
going to happen when you play back a sound file when your EQ is open is you'll
arms
see
and there was little
where
things sticking
there
up.
is energy
And when
and,
you
and,
put
and what
them
frequency range. So that
down.
means that, for example, there's not much happening over here. So if I lower the volume and these frequencies, this won't affect the sound as much. But this particular range right here, there's a good bit
Arms
happening.
and
So it'll by default, this particular plugin comes with 4 bands, but you can add more. And these bands you can think of it as just nodes that you can grab. And when you grab one, so if you leave it where it is, it's at 0 dB, so it's not being affected at all. But now I can grab and this, by the way, this is the frequency range, right? So this would be 0 hertz, and this is all the way to 20,000 hertz. So if I drag this down, notice that the what's happening is I'm not just bringing now a single frequency, because that would hardly even be noticeable. Typically, you'll affect a whole region, and so you have this center frequency of this band. So it's bringing that down the most, but then it's also kind of gradually bringing down. So there's a slope, so it's not bringing down everything equally. It's just kind of like a smooth lowering of that particular region.
arms and there was little things sticking up.
So here's the
And
original.
when arms and arms and
As you can see, the timbre is slightly different. It's a little bit more nasal. And so you could do it either way. You can bring up, let's say, the upper frequencies,
arms and there was little things sticking up.
or you can bring them down. You can also change. As you can see, there's these numbers right here. Each of these numbers allow you to control the parameters for that particular band, and you can add additional bands as well. So what we'll see here is that we have the type of filter, and which you can leave alone. I'll show you another one in a second. But then you have the center frequency. This will change. So if you change this, as you can see, your band will move. Why? Because this is the central frequency of that particular band. So if I do this, I'm basically grabbing that becomes the center frequency for that particular one. You can also specify so you can specify the frequency in hertz, or if you don't know, or if this happens to be a musical, let's say a piano piece, and you there's a certain area that you think is too high, you can also specify the actual pitch in F sharp 2, and this will also change as you go up here. And then the bandwidth, this, so told you I was going to talk about another filter. Let's try this one, the notch filter. This is pretty interesting, pretty good if you have a very specific kind of area that you want to target and bring down. So if you change the bandwidth, you can see it gets narrower and narrower and narrower. This is very helpful if you're trying to reduce noise, for example, and you have noise at one particular area, and you hear like a hiss or something, and you just want to get rid of it, and you can focus on that particular area, even to a pretty, you can make it quite tight like that. So let's say you have a very specific frequency hiss somewhere, then you can get rid of it this way, and then you can move it around to experiment. So that's that. Um,
arms and
so let's try some extreme settings. I'm gonna go back to the low shelf, and I'm gonna do this, for example. Let's see what happens.
arms and there's little things sticking up, and when you put them
Let's try that.
arms and arms and arms and there's little things arms and
Anyway, so you can fool around with this and see what happens. It's going to be very, very helpful when it comes to shaping the tone, and very, very helpful when it comes to getting rid of noise. It's very, very, very helpful. Okay, so that's EQ.